everybody. I'm uh, I'm broadcasting or streaming rather here from three different devices, and welcome to another week of conversations with a masterful raconteur. I am yours truly, Florida's own Barry S. McLeod, truly the right kind of different. And this week, I'm going to talk about one of my four books. This is actually the fourth book that I authored, and it's really juicy. It's really juicy. There's 10 chapters in it, and it's about my relationship biography. Okay, and before I get started, please keep up with me at barrysmcleod.com. And on my streaming platform, bbingin.com, that's BBINGN, on bbingin.com, for only $2.99, you get to watch the video book of this particular book where I sit down and I read the entire book um, about this relationship matter here. Okay, you can put in your earbuds and just do the audio part, or you can actually sit down and watch it. Why I did them that way? This book has 10 chapters in it, and I'm only going to share with you about chapter number one today. Okay, chapter number one is titled Janita. Basically, why I did them that way um, is a relationship biography that I wrote about starting when I went back to when I was 20 years old, and the relationships that were considered serious relationships by both parties. I wrote about those relationships. I wrote about very specifically about why those relationships did not last. Okay. Um, have you ever thought about writing your own biography about relationships? I was talking with someone this past weekend, and it's so easy to when you hear somebody say, "Man, they dated four or five different people." You know, it's so easy to point the finger. But if you are at least 30 years old or older, chances are you've dated maybe even a handful of guys or women. So, you know, some people, I don't know what their reasons are for rushing to judgment. When I wrote this book, people, some of the initial feedback was if I was writing to boast about relationships, which I was not. If I was writing from the state of mind of being a player and all of that, that's not what this book is about. This book has been, from the feedback that I've got from actual women who read the book, it has been very helpful and resourceful for them, because the things that I talk about in this book that I shared, um, it's just so thought provoking, and it provides a somewhat of a mirror to the reader so that they can really kind of check themselves. Um, I am so 100% truthful in this book. I shared why the relationships did not work from my perspective. And the thing that I'm proud to be able to say is that um, 10 chapters represent 10 women from when I was 20 up until in my 50s. Okay. And four of those women read this book, and each one of them contacted me. Now, I did not say in the book their real names and stuff, and I did not say things that would uh, expose them in any kind of way. But they knew from reading the book that that chapter was about me and them. And when they read the book and they contacted me about it, not one of them called me a liar. Not one of them called me a liar. Okay. Um, one of them said something like, "But darn, Barry, did you really have to share that?" And another one's, it was basically that kind of thing, because I think maybe it's possible or probably realistic that um, looking back on some things, sometimes we do see some of our wrongs and stuff, and it wasn't always the other person, you know. Um, Me being a hairstylist, making a career out of being a hairstylist, I was always labeled as a ladies' man. And yes, I have always liked women, so I could understand that. And I never denied that I like women. But people probably gave me far more credit than I deserved, because I wasn't uh, to the degree of what a lot of people like to tease me about or some criticize me about. But I like to say that I didn't do all that they might have said I did, but I did do. So, and probably anybody who would read this book would probably conclude that I was like a typical man, because I, being a single man, I was a typical man. So anyway, I wrote about these relationships that were supposed to be serious relationships, and they began and then they ended. And so I wrote about why they ended from my perspective. Okay. If you ask the women, they may tell you something else, but at least they did not call me a liar. Okay. So the first chapter is titled Janita. And this, everything I'm telling y'all now is 100%. 100%. It's true. So Janita was someone that I met when I was 20 years old. I was still trying to figure out how to be a real man, because I met her when I was just about to get out of the military. I think I had about 3 months or so left, maybe 4 months. I don't remember exactly now. But I was getting ready to get out of the military. I was stationed up in Norfolk, Virginia, and I was getting ready to come back home to Florida. And when I when I when I was just trying to ride out the remainder of my days, I met Janita, and she was a lovely person. She really was, and she had a son who was, I think, somewhere around 3 or 4. Okay. Really, really wonderful little boy. And I went in the military at 17 years old, and I started trying to learn how to be a man in the military. I became a man in the military. But 18, 19, 20, I was around guys who, military guys, Navy, okay, and being on the ship and can't wait to get off the ship and go find women and stuff like that, man. And a lot of the guys that were I served with, that I really admired, they were older guys, and some of them was just the coolest guys. And so, like a lot of young men, we look at the older guys, man, we admire them, and we admire certain things about their swag and their flair and their style and their cool and all of that. And we began to try to emulate a lot of that. So one of the things that would take place on the ship is guys come back from off Liberty, and we'd be in our compartments, and we'd be jiving and playing cards and talking trash and talking about the women and the different experiences and stuff. And I'd be sitting there listening to some of them older guys, man. And so that's kind of how I really, really started to begin to evolve when it comes to women. And so fast forward I do 3 years, and then I got about 3 months before it's time for me to get out and go home. And I meet this wonderful woman, Janita. And she really was a quality woman. When I look back at it, you know, a few years later, it's been a long time now, but 2 or 3 years after I got out, I thought about it, man. If I had stayed in that city and was continuing to date her, she more likely than not would have made me a solid partner. I mean, she was a good girl. And but the thing, like I said, she had a son. And um I had the first time that I went to her house, this kid, he ran out the door and he jumped in my arms and he held me like I was his father. I don't remember. I think she probably told me some things about what was going on with his father, but I really don't remember all of that right now. But I still remember right now how this little boy held me. And I can remember that I did not know what to do with that. I mean, I hadn't had that. That was my first experience of dating a woman who had a child. And I honestly did not know what to do with that situation. This wonderful kid who is embracing me like a father and needed a man in his life. And Janita, she saw me as somebody that could have made the difference in her life. And I lied about uh I guess I did lie, but initially I just didn't tell her that I was getting out of the service soon and I was going home. So to that degree, I was a selfish young man and I was immature and I was really just thinking about what my world was going to be when I got in the military, because living that life for 3 years, living on the ship for 3 years, man, now you got to get out, you got to find a job, you got to find a place to stay. You know, the way I was raised, it was no going back to mama's house. So I had to figure some things out. So I thought, well, I got to go home and I got to start my life. And so at first I wasn't taking Janita that kind of serious. And the more time we spent together, it turned into something that it was nice, you know. And I began to realize that this woman is a good woman. And I began to realize that she was really looking at me as a man to be in her life, to be the difference in her life. And when that dawned on me, that's when I got real uneasy about everything. And I started to think, man, I'm going to be going home and that's that. And I'm going to end up disappointing this woman. So as I was continuing to go see her, um, uh, I'm going to give y'all, I'm not going to give y'all every detail of the book because there's some very intimate details in the book. But she made me realize, and I experienced it with her, that I was the first guy to really impact her sexually. And for that to be her first experience, I think it just kind of blew her mind, you know. And I took it all for granted because I never thought about how a woman thinks about that and how that impacts a woman and what that means to a woman. That kind of stuff, I was oblivious to that. Only thing I knew was I was a man just doing the things that turned me on that I like to do. And I wanted to have the satisfaction of being able to know for myself, within myself, that I'm a real man and I know how to turn a woman on and please her and get her to be crazy about me. But actually, I wasn't necessarily trying to make her crazy about me. It's just one of them things that just happened because of the experience that we shared. So I can remember after that night, and the way she held me, and the tears that was coming out of her eyes, and the things that she was saying, I knew that she was telling me the truth. And that was the beginning of the hardest part for me, because now that she has opened up and revealed what she was really feeling and what she was experiencing for the very first time, I don't know at all what to do with that. And so I was stuck between not wanting to hurt her and also knowing that I'm going home. So the whole where I handled that very wrong was not just being man enough to tell her the truth that, look, I'm going to be going home and maybe you shouldn't have no expectations of me. That I have to own that. I botched that. I was dead wrong for that. And so I allowed her to think every day, because I would go back to the ship, and that's where I was living, on the ship. So I would go back to the ship, and then, when I finished working, I was driving to her house, and we doing things like people in relationships do, having dinner together. And each time her son, this little boy, he was becoming more and more attached to me. And so my conscience, it was growing greater and greater, full of guilt. It was difficult for me to look at the two of them. It really, really was. And I began to feel very, very guilty about the fact that not only was I going to hurt her, but I was going to hurt him, because I knew that I was going home. And so when I got down to that last month, I started trying to figure out, okay, how do I tell her? How do I tell her? And so I just never mustered up the courage to tell her. So when I got down to 3 weeks, she started noticing things. And when we got into down to the last 2 weeks, she started feeling very, very uneasy. It's like she knew, but she was afraid to ask me. And eventually, about a week or a little over a week before I was to get out, she asked me if I was going home, if I was going to leave her. Man, that was very, very difficult for me, because I've never been the kind of guy that just was ruthless about women. I did play the game, but I never was ruthless. I was never malicious. And so here I am with a genuine woman, with a good woman. And we were both young, because I was 20 and she had to be probably 20 or 19. And so she's asking me these questions, and I'm like, so finally I had to fess up. And I told her, I said, yeah, I'm getting out of the service. And she said, when? And then I had to tell the truth and tell her when. And so she got upset. She was very emotional. And that was just kicking my natural born black behind, man. I was feeling so less of a man, and so bad. So I thought at that particular time, the thing to do is to try to ease and pacify the moment and all that kind of stuff by lying to her. This is where I really, really told the lie straight up. I said, look, I'm going to go home. I'm going to get a couple of things situated, and then I'm coming back. And I just boldly lied right there, because I didn't know what else to say. And I had experienced some shipmates and stuff, man. They handled it very different from me, because a lot of guys and a lot of women went through that same experience. When it's time to go, a lot of guys just like, see ya. But I just wasn't really that guy. So I lied and told her I was coming back. The thought of coming back was in my mind, but I knew deep down that I was coming home to start my life all over again. And so she looked me in the eye and she said, "You're not coming back, are you?" And I said, "Yes, I am. I'm coming back." And so uh, I left. And when I left, I really, really, really hurt her. I hurt that woman bad. And so, um, and not only did I hurt her, fortunately, her son was too young to really understand, but a child is going to pick up on the emotions of their parents. And in this case, this little boy was, I'm sure he picked up on the emotions of his mother. And I'm sure he asked her questions about where was I? And I don't know what she told him. But that was that was a very that was a situation where I feel like I embarrassed myself, and I definitely demonstrated that I was less than a man about it. And so that, along with some more details, is what chapter 1 is in this book. So um, um, we did communicate for a few months, and the one thing that it never did satisfy me about how I handled that so poorly, but she did somewhere about a year later. She wrote me and she sent me pictures and she told me that she had gotten married, and I felt somewhat relieved for her sake that she did find somebody that she would marry and go on with her life. But I guess the moral of this story for any man that's watching this story is watching this live right now is that learning how to be a man is a process. You know, we learn things in middle school, we learn things in high school. I don't know if they have middle school these days, but back in my day, they had middle school and then you went to high school. Um, but there's things that we learn, and we learn a whole lot of things from older guys. We learn things from guys when we're in 11th and 12th grade. We learn things from a lot of guys who are already out of school, especially when they have cars and when they have nice clothes and jewelry, and when they have women and stuff, and we admire that, and then we see stuff in movies and stuff. And back in my day, you know, they had the Mac and Shaft and Superfly and all them kind of movies and stuff where black man was flashy and had this and had all of that going on, and it impacted it impacted quite a lot of young black men, and I know that because a lot of my friends, we were excited and admiring a lot of the same things, and we talked about it. You know, we a lot of time we talked about how we were going to have some of them things, and so uh, if you're a young man and you're watching this right now, you know there are some good women in this world, and you never know how things are actually going to turn out. In the long run, if you handle things like a man, you increase the odds and the potential of that woman at least respecting you. Even if she decides that she wants nothing else to do with you or whatever, if she can look back and say, well, you know what? He didn't lie to me. He is a decent man. He is a good man. You know, that's a whole lot better than treating a woman in such a way that you would never want a man to treat your sister or your mother or your niece or your goddaughter, you know, or your best friend's daughter, you know. Um, so coming into your manhood, it is a process, and it's something that you really have to pay attention to the right things, because if you have your focus and your mind on the wrong things, you'll put too many minutes into that, and sometimes that will become a part of who you are. When I was in the military, I guys would have Penthouse and Playboy magazines and stuff like that. And that was a real treat for us young guys coming into that environment to be able to see that, look at the magazines and stuff like that, and fantasize, all this stuff. But we were really learning about women in the worst way rather than the better, as opposed to the better way. So you start getting all of these images in your head, and you start creating these fantasies and all of this kind of stuff. And then you start wanting to experience a lot of this kind of stuff. And you don't even have a clue that a lot of this stuff becomes templates in your mind. And you begin to select women in your life based off of some of those templates. And then you begin to mishandle a lot of things based off of the images and the people that the guys that you admired who were doing the thing the wrong way. And usually at least one time at some point you're going to meet that solid woman that she's going to get your heart, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. And then if you're not ready, you're going to hurt that woman, and then somewhere down the road you're going to realize how you hurt yourself just as much. So process that, think about that, you know. So I wrote, again, 10 chapters about 10 different women. Several years later, I got in another relationship and I wrote about that. And then a few years later, I got in another relationship and I wrote about that, and so forth and so on. And again, if you like to enjoy this book, you can go to my website, bbinging.com. It's my streaming platform where I house all of my content. And you'll pay only $2.99, and you can watch 24/7 for 30 days, everything I got. And one of the things I have on there is a video reading of this book, why I did them that way. So this chapter, again, I'll come back and I'll share some other chapters with you. I never really know exactly which direction I'm going to go into when Monday comes. Sometimes I have something planned out that I want to talk about, and then my mind shifts or my mood shifts, or something impacts me throughout the day, or somebody says something to me and then it steers me in another direction. I've written over 22 screenplays now. I've written at least the same amount of stage plays, maybe more. I've written 4 books. I've written a lot of articles and stuff that are fun reads. And so I've just written so much stuff, so I could literally go every day for to probably pushing a year and talk about something that I wrote and not have to talk about the same thing. So God has blessed me with the gift. That's why I call myself a masterful raconteur. In fact, I'm already producing my new comedy series called She the Player. And She the Player is a hilarious. When I tell you this is going to be hilarious, it's going to be like a series of short films. So I've already scripted the first 3, and I'm going to do probably about 9, maybe 10. And just going to take you on this journey about this, a couple of young women divas who are going to try to play 3 old school men as sugar daddies. And it's comedy, comedy, comedy. And it's just going to be so hilarious. I'm also, in the next 6 weeks or less, I'm going to be producing my first comedy tour where I'll be presenting an ensemble of stand-up comedians, and we're just going to go and tour different places and bring the funny and bring the laughter and just bring the house down with fun laughter. And if you've been watching me lately, I'm also in the studio right now producing my my new jazz song, which I'm going to probably do a CD, but song number 1, I'm working on that right now, and I'll be sharing that with you all real soon. I want to thank y'all for chiming in. BarrySMcLeod.com, bbinging.com, and if you don't mind, share this post with somebody. And How about support me with $2.99 at my streaming platform, bbinging.com, BBINGN.com, and enjoy some of the content on there. I got a variety of films, stage plays. My award-winning play Divorcing Us is on there, and you can watch all of that 24/7 for a whole month for just $2.99. I appreciate you all chiming in this evening. Florida's own Barry S. McLeod, truly the right kind of different. Y'all have a good evening.